mad is
We've got about 1 minute before we'll get started.
Got a lot of suits in the room tonight.
Popular place.
I'd rather be here than where my law partner is, right? He's in town.
All right, I've got 7 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Do we have Mr. Ed Radiger? Do we see him? Is he here? Our Associate Police Chaplain? I don't see him. Okay. Well, then I'll go ahead and open with a brief prayer here. Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of community. Fill us with your grace, Lord God, as we make decisions that might affect the residents, businesses, staff, and friends of the city of Erlanger. Please continue to remind us that all we do here today, all that we accomplish, is for the pursuit of truth and the greater glory of you, for the service of humanity. We ask these things in your name. Amen. We'll call the meeting to order. This is the March 6th, 2018 regular council meeting. Let's rise and say a pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Hoffman, could you please take roll call?
Mr. Burke? Mr. Cahill?
here.
Miss Kyle?
Here.
Mr. Skidmore? Miss Sedkamp?
Here.
Miss Cahill? Miss Cahill? Mr. Montgomery? Miss Skidmore? Miss Pitts? Mr. Nicely? Miss Fetty?
Here.
Mr. Blankenship?
All right, we have a quorum. Council, you've received a copy of the minutes of the February 6th, 2018 regular council meeting and the February 20th, 2018 special council meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to be made at this time? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion that we accept as written. Motion by Mr. Blankenship, second by Mrs. Pitts. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carried. Now, you've also received a copy of the agenda for this evening's meeting, March 6, 2018. Are there any additions to be made at this time? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion. Motion by Mrs. Kyle, second by Mrs. Sudkamp. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. All right, we'll move on to the special presentations. Tonight we have a business spotlight of United Dairy Farmers and CCI. Angelos Kristen, welcome. Thank you for coming out. Oh, if you wouldn't mind, there's a red button. There you go, you got it.
Well, I'd like to start by thanking the council for giving us the opportunity to speak with you this evening. My name is Angelos Kristen. I work for United Dairy Farmers Cold Chain Integrity. We're at 2825 Crescent Springs. I don't know if it's Road, Pike, Drive. I learned a long time ago when I've been at that location with the dairy for 22 years. And you try to tell people from northern Kentucky where you're at, Crescent Springs Drive in Erlanger. And but we learned a long time ago that we're the guys next to Toohey's Poultry.
Yes.
So if you say, well, we're next to Toohey's Poultry, everybody kind of knows where we're at. The other, I guess, thing I'd like to address up front and then I'd like to follow up with is the tremendous partnership we feel that we've had with the city over the years. I mean, from the fire department to, David Hahn's area to Sherry. We feel very confident that, when we do have a new initiative, that you guys will be fair and reasonable and you work with us. And everybody really has a high level of professionalism, particularly the guys in the fire department. I mean, we work with those guys 2-3 times a year on inspections and other things, and they're great. I mean, Chief Whitaker's got a great group. The guys that do the inspections are fantastic, so I think you guys should be very proud of the group you have, because I've worked other places where you don't have that level of professionalism. I mean, they're tough but fair, and again, we always take their recommendations, and it's been a great relationship. About what we do at 2825 Crescent Springs Drive, I mean, everybody knows United Dairy Farmers is convenience stores, malts, ice cream, and we originally purchased the property in 1993. I think prior to that it was Wadsworth Electric,
Yeah.
which may ring a bell for some folks that have been here for a while, and I think they were liquidated in 1990. The dairy bought the property in 93 with the intentions of putting our ice cream warehousing there. But as you'll see with the presentation, it's grown into much more. Kind of there's what United Dairy Farmers, a lot of people think of, and we are an ice cream warehouse, that's for sure. But there's a lot of other things that go on at the site. Now, I took some photographs, and I am not a very good photographer, so bear with me. There's the sign that as you pull into the property, kind of what you see. And, you see United Dairy Farmers and Prescott Tank Lines, Queen City Ice, TBS Meat Distributors, CCI, Wild Flavors, RX Crossroads. The entire property is owned by United Dairy Farmers. I think it was 20 plus acres, and at some point we bought 10 off Toohey's when we built the CCI building. But there's a lot going on in that facility. I think the dairy has 150, 160 employees on site. And then if you take our third-party lease customers, TBS, Wild, Queen City Ice is a UDF label. Prescott is a fuel hauling subsidiary for the dairy. And RX Crossroads, the number is about 185 people that actually work on site there. So there's quite a few people that make a living there in Erlanger. This is an aerial shot, and I actually don't have an aerial shot from the early 90s when we originally purchased the property. But the front building that you see, that's the old Wadsworth Electric building. And in 1995, after the dairy purchased the property, they built that high structure. It's an ice cream freezer, but it's designed specifically to handle our ice cream. So it's highly automated, but at the same time, we've used it for other things over the years. And probably about 1997, I got approached by the dairy, said, we got that big freezer over there, and geez, half the year it's empty because we've sold all our ice cream. Can we do anything with it? I said, geez, I don't know. So we found a business that was contra-cyclical to ice cream. You build it in the winter, your inventory drops, as the summer progresses. So we started storing Kroger turkeys there. That was sort of our first foray into public storage, if you will. The original property line actually kind of went straight back, and it dissected that phase one of CCI. What used to be back there was just a Kentucky gully, what I call Kentucky brush or Kentucky rough, and eventually it got filled in to form CCI. When we built phase one of CCI, and again, working with David and other folks at the city to get the project done was really important. The building in the back, and I think it's perspective, is actually larger than the building in the front. That's about 110,000 square feet roughly of refrigerated warehouse. And we started building the building, and we had a tenant previously. Wild Flavors used to occupy the front third of the Wadsworth building because, I don't know, around 92 or 93, they came to us and said, we need a place where we can keep our refrigerated and our frozen products, but we want our people in the building, which was a real stretch for us to have another company in the building. And they quickly outgrew that space, so we were building CCI kind of on spec, speculating that we could fill it with business. And about the time we poured the footers, Wild came to us and says, we want in. And if you kind of look at to the right there, you see sort of a step down in the building. That's highly specialized space that we built for Wild Flavors. Their products, they have a lot of products that are flavoring, and they have an alcohol content, so they're flammable. So that is a flammable, food-grade flammable storage room. And because of the specialty nature of the construction, obviously, in return, we wanted a long lease, so we got a 15-year lease out of that deal. And the rest of the building, really, that Wild occupies about a third of that building over there. The rest of the building is primarily what we call our public storage business. And, that's more transactional based, where we take in a pallet for 30 days and we charge a set rate for 30 days, and then that rate reoccurs after 30 days. So it's more kind of, people are allowed to sort of go with their ebbs and flows of their needs. There you see the Wild Flavors. They actually occupy 1 through 5 docks in that building. The business went so well that we decided to build a phase 2, which we did. And as part of that, you kind of see to the left the line there that kind of marks off the building there. That's RX Crossroads. We got approached by, they're a Louisville-based company, pharmaceutical company. And one of the things that we're sort of known for is our deep refrigeration. In the food world, there's 38 degrees, which is refrigerated, frozen, which is 0, and then deep frozen, which is 20. And as ice cream guys, we've been dealing with that for 70 years. These guys needed some super deep cold temperatures, and they needed some, because it's pharmaceutical and because it's FDA, they had to have 2 refrigeration systems in case one went down, and highly specialized generators. So again, we built the specialized construction for them in exchange for a 15-year lease. So that's kind of the genesis of that building. But all the building in between was sort of left to us to fill with other frozen products. And because we're ice cream guys, one of the things that there's, you see the RX Crossroads logo. Kroger is a huge manufacturer of ice cream. And if you walk down the ice cream aisle, you probably don't realize it, but 70% of the product there is manufactured by Kroger. You see the homemade brand or Breyers or Edie's on the shelf, but from Private Select to Kroger Deluxe to Turkey Hill is one of theirs. They have probably every popsicle and Kroger branded everything. And they came to us and said, geez, we really need a place here in the East where we can take the ice cream from our various plants, because they all make different segments of the line. This plant makes sandwiches, or this plant makes Kroger Deluxe. We need a place to consolidate that business. And that's what we ended up doing in the majority of the buildings. So Kroger's really become our single largest customer on the property. We distribute all the ice cream to every Kroger warehouse east of the Mississippi. And I think there's 9 of them. So there's, at any given time, I don't know, we probably have 30,000 pallets of Kroger ice cream in the building. So it's a big business for us. The other things that we do on the site, 1999, we started an ice company, a packaged ice company. We had all this in the old building. We had a lot of excess refrigeration capacity. The owners didn't like what Home City Ice was charging them for a bag of ice, and they said, well, you dummies over there can freeze ice and put it in a bag. So we started the Queen City Ice Company, which was primarily built to produce ice for our stores. And then we realized that there's also kind of another market, an industrial market for food companies, and a special events market where we have all these tractor trailers that sit around and do nothing on the weekends. these special event operators, whether it's Taste of Cincinnati or Paul Brown Stadium or all these other big venues, really need drop trailers, which the other ice guys charge a lot of money for. So we kind of found a niche. So we service our dairy stores, special event customers, and industrial customers. We never got into servicing other convenience stores or the Kroger stores because it just wasn't something that we felt comfortable. We didn't feel comfortable putting a college kid in a truck during the summer. So, we stayed away from that business, but it's been great. We produce 25 million pounds of ice a year out of that building, and it's not a very big operation. So, we, between the ice and the other things we do, we also do a lot of, we deliver ice cream to the dairy stores. There's a fleet there that does that. There's a fleet there that delivers groceries to our dairy stores, separate fleet. We have, I don't know, about 8 gasoline tankers that park there, but the drivers are based out of there. Most of our gasoline drivers are based out of Lebanon now. There's just a tremendous amount of activity. One thing, kind of, I think, sort of tells of the partnership. It was Hurricane Ike. I'm trying to think when that was. I believe Hurricane Ike was September 2008, and everybody lost power. And we, for some reason, I've been told that it's because we're on the same circuit as the hospitals. We didn't lose power, but everybody lost power. And we got approached by your fire department saying, hey, we can't find fuel for our trucks anywhere. We've got in-ground diesel fuels there for our fleet. So will you guys sell us some diesel fuel? We said, yeah. And they came in, and we don't try, with the diesel that we sell there, we don't try to make a lot of money at it. It's, if we make a nickel a gallon, we're happy kind of thing. But they started fueling it, I think they liked it. And then we got approached by another gentleman at the fire department, and his name escapes me now, and he says, if you guys put in a transfer switch that will allow us to use our generators on our truck in case power goes down again. And, I went to the owner and said, hey, it's going to cost us, $5,000, $6,000 to put in this transfer switch. Is it something you want to do? He said, yeah, it makes sense for the community, and it makes sense for us. Consequently, Crescent Springs started fueling there. Pleasant Point Fire started fueling there. Kenton County, there's a bus depot behind Bluegrass Meats for Kenton County. They started fueling there. So, One Kind Act sort of, helped embellish the business. And we still sell fuel up and down the street as it really is a courtesy to folks. 2000, the EPA cracked down on these guys that had these small in-ground tanks. Bluegrass Meats had one, Erlanger Lumber had one, all these guys. So they had to get out of that business, so we stayed in it. So there's probably half a dozen businesses up and down the street that buy fuel from us there. It's not what we set out to do. It's not a core competency, but we sell fuel off the side as well. So that's kind of a quick summary of what we do. Any questions?
There's samples?
I thought about bringing some down, but I really did. But then I thought, man, I looked you guys up on the internet, and I was looking at. I said, I don't know if they want that on their carpet in here.
Right.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, I know you guys are also a great community partner when it comes to tours for the grade schoolers.
Yeah,
And,
no, we've been doing that. I talked to Sherry for 8 years. And
Yeah.
those kids come in, and they're, it's kind of like herding kittens a little bit, but they're a lot of fun. And we take 2 groups through, and
Yeah.
then, of course, at the end, we feed them all ice cream, which is the real reason they want to go there anyway.
Right.
They say, "But these are the pallets of packaging, and this is a forklift, and this is what
Yeah.
we do." They're not too interested, but they're interested in chocolate and vanilla ice cream.
That's for sure. And it's not every day that you get an opportunity to be in a room with 10 million gallons of ice cream at one time.
Yeah, no, the fire department years ago, because that high-rise is such harsh conditions, and I don't know if it was a hazing practice, but they used to bring some of their younger guys in and make them climb the ladder in there, and it's 90 feet high. Because in the event that we had a power outage and somebody got stuck up there could be a potential rescue.
Wow.
But I think maybe employee relations dictated that they stop that practice, but that's probably about 15 years ago. Those guys used to climb the ladder in the high rise, and it's -20 with wind chill, probably about -35. It's cold in there.
Well, thank you so much for coming out this evening.
Well, thank you. We
Great to
appreciate
see
it.
you. All right, next up, we've got Officer Joe Scroggin, talk about the Explorer program. There you go. You got it.
Excellent. First, just thank everyone on the council here for allowing me a few minutes to speak to everybody. I wear many different hats here at the Erlanger Police Department, a lot of different responsibilities, but one I'm extremely proud to be a part of is our Police Explorers program. I know a lot of you are familiar with it. For those who aren't, the Exploring program is a national program. It's parented by the Dan Beard Foundation. Dan Beard, of course, Boy Scouts of America. Exploring was a branch that was created not just for police work, not just for any particular type of work. It's a program that allows, typically high school age students to become involved in career paths. There's exploring for doctors, there's exploring for firefighting, exploring for just about everything you can find. Now, the police exploring program has almost taken a life of its own. It's become so popular. We have national competitions. We have, national conferences. It's become its own entity. Our young people right here with me today is one of our explorers, Caden Schaefer. To give you an idea of what this program does for our young adults, Caden Schaefer has been with the program for 4 years now. This is his last year. We do have age restrictions, and I'm sad to say I'm going to lose him after this spring. He's going to be too old to participate as an explorer anymore. But the chances of him sticking around and being a student advisor, I would say, are pretty high. He's actually gone, when he first came to the program, I had trouble getting him to answer any kind of question. He was so shy. He has just come out of his shell tenfold since being with this program. I mean, I'm amazed at the steps he's taken to grow as a person just in general, not just with police work. We have a lot of success vaulting explorers on their career paths. We have former members that are military, and even with the police explorers, they go into other fields. They go into firefighting. We have a former explorer with us tonight as well, Miss Raven Kane, who is now one of our full-time dispatchers here at Erlanger. The program's excellent. We're not just teaching kids about police work, we're teaching about life skills. And if I could get every high school age kid to come and join us, I would, because I think it's an excellent springboard to their adult lives. Tonight, in particular, I want to talk to you all about our upcoming fundraiser. We are hosting a trivia night fundraiser on March 31st. It's going to be at the Edgewood Senior Center. Every group, every type of program you got, there comes financial needs, and we're no different. So what I'm looking at is finding people that are interested in playing trivia. We're not just looking for handouts. We want you to come out and have a good time. If you got family members who, are constantly, plugging fun facts at you, and annoying you, they're great. Those are the ones we want. They're people that got useless knowledge like I do. They can tell you, what the oldest city in the state of Iowa was. Just ridiculous facts like that. There's all kinds of stuff. We have a lot of fun. You get some prizes. We joke around. It's an excellent fun time. This is our 4th year of doing it now. Aside from looking for players, we are looking for sponsors for our program too for the night. Event sponsors. As an event sponsor, we ask for a donation of $200. You get advertised material all over the room, on our screen for the trivia night. Table sponsors is only $100, and you get your business, or just if you just want as an individual, say, hey, I like the idea, I want to help out, I'll sponsor a table. You'd have your name and anything else you want to display, as long as it's not anything vulgar or crude. Obviously, we'd display it for you. If you just if you've got your own little lawnmower repair business and you want to help us out, we'll plug it and it'll be mentioned throughout the night. But the players is what we're really looking for. We want some people to come out and fill these tables and have some fun with us that night. We're also looking for if you've got something laying around your garage, some weird Christmas present you got one year and you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this thing. We're taking donations for door prizes and silent auction items too. So anything you can think of, we're reaching out for help because, we're trying to pay for uniforms and equipment and fees. I mean, it never ends. And anyone that's been in kind of group like this knows their fees never end. My biggest goal is to take these kids to a national competition. We have not been able to do that since I've been part of the program, and it's cost, the travel cost and hotel costs, things like that. They've grown so much since I've been part of the program. This past year, in our regional competition that we've become a big part of, third place in several events. Okay, so they've gone from the first year I was here, they won nothing. Second year, they won nothing, and they're learning so much about what we do. So they've made great strides. Fine example with Caden again. He was awarded the Joey Wood Memorial Scholarship last year based on all the work he does. And I'm not just talking about training with us. These guys are out in the community every year for the city of Erlanger, the Memorial Day Parade. They're out there helping control traffic. Cops and kids, they're there every year helping us with the young ones, helping them shop, wrap presents. Every time we have something come up in the city, any kind of our, the summer movie, they come out and serve popcorn. They do all this just as selflessly as anybody could ask. They don't get anything for their time other than a pat on the back and a thank you. These are the kind of kids that I'm confident are going to be the foundation for the next generation. They're charitable, they're hardworking, they're giving, and we're asking for some help so they can continue with their training and learning. If you do have any interest in the program, I have a few flyers. I'll have them. They'll be sitting on the table. You may have seen them on your way in. They're free to take. Please take a look at them. Take them with you on your way out tonight. Is there any questions I can answer right now? Anybody?
Just one up here.
I have one.
Yes, sir.
Is there a deadline to register to participate or to be a sponsor?
We do have, there's not an official deadline. There is limited space available for players. We only have so many tables that we can fill up the space. If you do sign up by March 12th, it is, as far as players, it's going to be $120 per team. Teams can consist up to 10 players, okay? After March 16th through March 31st, the fee's going to go up to $150. So we're trying to get people to sign up early and often. I thought I saw another hand. Yes, ma'am. Door prizes can be brought to the police department. If you go to the front clerk, just tell them this is for the trivia, for the exploring program, mention Sergeant Joe Scroggin, and it will find its way to my desk. And I've got a few things stacked up on it right now I got to find a home for. Any other questions? All right, thank you again, everybody, for allowing me a few minutes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sergeant Scroggin, for your commitment to the Explorer program, and thank you, Caden Schaefer, for your service to the city. All right, next we've got the police employee introduction. Lieutenant Colonel Rader.
Good evening. Got a couple of our newest new hires for the city of Erlanger. I know we have a full agenda, so I'll make this really quick. Believe it or not, I've asked them all if they want to speak, and they all told me no. So I'll do all the talking. First, I'll introduce you to Becky Strauss. She is the new police social worker. A little bit of history from Becky. She graduated from Campbell County in 2001. She has an 8-year-old daughter. She received her bachelor's of social work from UK, and then she received her master's from Campbellsville University. So with all that and her work experience, she actually has over 15 years of social work experience. So she's already been a benefit to us. If you see her walking around or anybody has an issue, whether it's council, mayor, citizens, please give us a call. We'll send her your way. Our next new hire is Patty Sanchez. She was hired as a dispatcher. She's a mother of 4, and she is married to Oscar Sanchez, who some of you know is one of our officers on third shift. He's back there in the corner with the kids. So he's doing a great job of keeping kids quiet. Patty was a medical assistant for 5.5 years prior to this, and she actually lives in the city. So she was happy to get hired in the city that she's going to serve. Our next, Bianca Jones. She came to us, believe it or not, from Brown County, Ohio. She was a dispatcher there, but again, she lives in the city of Erlanger and was making that trek every day, which you know is kind of long. So she was very excited to get hired, and I believe I saw you actually walking to work the other day. So that beats the 45-minute drive. She also has, or she is a big sister to her siblings, so that's what she enjoys in her off time. If you guys get an email, phone call, anything from any of these young ladies, please just, give them the best. If you guys have any questions for them, they're more than willing to answer anything, but I don't think they are real fond on talking tonight, so that's it.
All right, next we've got a proclamation. I would ask Coach Tiki and Addison Viox and Jordan Yates, if you wouldn't mind coming up to the podium. Okay, so I'll go ahead and read this. Proclamation by the Mayor of the City of Erlanger, Kentucky. To all to whom these presents shall come. Whereas seniors Addison Viox and Jordan Yates have been transformational to the Lloyd High School Lady Juggernaut basketball program. And whereas when these girls started as freshmen, the team had only 2 winning seasons in its school history, 1981 and in 1983. And whereas through hard work and determination, these girls changed the way the program is thought of by compiling a 67-50 record for their 4-year career, which includes a 20-10 record this year, second best in the school history. And whereas Addison and Jordan will be the first girls to ever graduate from Lloyd High School with a winning record, which included 3 winning seasons in a row. And whereas the Lady Juggernauts finished in second place in the NCKC conference, and both Addison and Jordan were selected to be NCKC all-conference team, on the all-conference team. And whereas, on top of their basketball accomplishments, Addison and Jordan are excellent students in the classroom, as both players carry over a 3.0 GPA and are taking multiple AP or college-level courses. And whereas the City of Erlanger, Kentucky, congratulates both Addison Viox and Jordan Yates on their accomplishments on the basketball court as well as in the classroom. Now therefore, I, Tyson Hermes, Mayor of the City of Erlanger, Kenton County, Kentucky, do hereby proclaim March 7th, 2018 to be Addison Viox and Jordan Yates Day in Erlanger, and do commend this observance to all our citizens, given under my hand and the seal of the City of Erlanger on this 6th day of March, 2018.
I'm just like them, I don't want to talk.
Well, congratulations also to Coach Tyler Tiki for carrying the girls' basketball team through 3 winning seasons in a row. It's an incredible accomplishment for you as well. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and open it up to the citizen and public comments. Do we have anybody signed up to speak? All right, first we've got Mrs. Ann Miller. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I just want to say thank you for tabling our, the vote for the bid on the 2 division properties until tonight. I really appreciate that. Our neighbors have come together and we have some questions that we all work together to come up with or rather a few of us came up with. I think one of our concerns with Honk, with the two bids on the properties are, what would the list price of these homes, and will they compete with other house prices in the area of our neighborhood? That's one of our questions.
Yeah, the honk stated that each house would be $150,000 each, so it'd be a total of about $158,000 of value for each home.
Another question, Matt had shared with me earlier today information on Honk and about the tenants would be leasing the property for 2 to 3 years, and then that rent money would then go towards purchasing of the home as a down payment. What happens if the tenants in the Honk home do not maintain the property after they're through the lease portion? What happens after that period of time when they're now owning that home? Is Honk still involved with that, or for a period of years, or is it just in their name and Honk walks away from it?
Yeah, the home would be in their name, and then our codes department would take care of any issues after that point. Or they would still take care of issues from the point that it's built. But like we discussed, Honk makes sure that they maintain their properties while during the lease.
But only during that lease period of time?
Correct.
So after the lease period is over, then it's on the homeowner?
Correct.
And there is no other outside agencies except for code enforcement, which is also for all of Erlanger?
Correct. They are homeowners after that lease is
Okay.
over.
Because I think our concerns there are, especially, I know you and I discussed as well, that it's either lower income families or middle income families. And, our neighborhood has varying degrees of socioeconomic levels. And I think our concern is, if the some properties in our neighborhood aren't taken care of. It's kind of hit or miss with some properties. And I think with that in mind, should there be extra stipulations if it is, well, I guess there wouldn't be if Honk walks away from it, so never mind what I was thinking on that. How long are the mortgages on these loans? Is it the same as a regular mortgage?
It turns into a regular mortgage. That
Okay.
they pay the lease until they think the tenant is capable of maintaining the property of their own, and then they get their own loan, just like anybody else. I know there's a stigma kind of on Honk and people who would use this program, and I hope that's not a stigma that everybody believes all the time, because just because they're moderate to low income doesn't mean that they're not going to take care of their property, and I
Right,
think
and
that's kind of a
that's-
stigma that Honk's trying
Right,
to avoid
right.
and get away from.
Right.
These are really nice homes that they built, the ones I visited. So, I hate to
Well, from your
stereotype
pictures, they
the
look
people
very
coming
nice.
in.
Right, and these are just questions we all have. My other concern too is looking at the PDF that you sent me, how close that property of the second home would be to my home. It is right on the property line. How much easement is between the Honk home and my home?
Well, it wouldn't be an easement, it would be
Well, not an
whatever our
easement, but-
code. I don't know, Dave, what's the setback for that area?
Yes.
So the zoning for that, just like your house, is 5 feet from the property line?
Is there a different rear yard setback? Okay.
And that
30
would be to our
35 foot.
neighbor behind, yes, to the
35
side
foot.
of us.
Rear setback.
Okay. Another concern that we have too is with all of the traffic that is already coming down the street, when construction would be happening on these homes, those streets are fairly new as far as all the construction that has been done on them. From what I understand from one of our neighbors, there is not rebar in that concrete. You can hear, well, there might be, but there's, but there is concerns about the wear and the tear on the streets. Also, if there's semis coming down the street and taking over, there's already very little parking on our street, let alone with 2 new homes that would go in. Then with construction, with semis coming down the street, wearing down the street even more, already neighbors which granted, it's a public street, but they're already taking over. So there's not much on-street parking right now anyways. Just a lot of concerns. If the bid was turned down today and went up for bid again, and say my husband and I did put a bid in on that property, if we purchased that land and added to our lot, it could really help increase the property values and the home values for the neighborhood. That's something of our concern, especially, and nothing against Honk. It sounds like a wonderful program for those who would qualify for that. But again, not knowing and not trying to put a stigma, but I guess I am, on the homeowners who would purchase those, how do we know in the future what that's going to bring to the value of our homes on that street? There's already several rental homes. There's already several, from what I understand, there is also a couple of, I may be using the wrong term, but halfway houses around the corner from us on another street. Just a lot of questions and concerns. And that's what I'm presenting to you tonight, is to please take these questions that we have into consideration when you make that bid. Our neighborhood means a lot to us. And I would ask you to not accept those bids tonight. Also, another question that came up as well, what about allowing, and I noticed in the PDF as well that, when I brought up about having another community park, that, there is a, quote, park behind Ian Whitus's house. It used to be a park. There used to be swings. The swings are gone. And in all of those neighborhood little parks, the swings are gone. All there is are basketball courts. That's not really a park to me. What about a community garden? What about the city looking at taking grants and allowing a community garden to go on that property? A lot of good things that could be community involvement. A lot of us would be very interested in that. And, some of you might not really think that that would be worthwhile, but it would be to our neighborhood. My neighbor, Angie Cool, and we used to have a huge garden on the back end of our lot. We have 3/4 of an acre straight back. And unfortunately, right now, it's not in very good. We're going to work on it and have it going again this spring and summer, but that was a joy to our children. And that could be a joy to our neighbors. So please take these ideas that we have into consideration tonight when you're
Okay.
making that vote.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we've got Olivia Miller. Sure.
Red button.
May I ask a question about what Ms. Miller was talking about?
Absolutely.
We said the Honk houses are worth $158,000. Is that correct?
That's
piece?
what they're projecting to build a $150,000 home on top of the property.
Okay, what are the other houses around there? Are they comparable?
I don't have values of them.
David's shaking his head yes.
Some are. Others are not.
I've got a presentation on this later to kind of go over some, but I don't have the home values on there.
Hi, Olivia. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Thank you for listening to me tonight. Hi, my name is Olivia Miller. I am Ann and Jerry Miller's daughter. I have a field by my house. I love to play on it. In the summertime, I love to run around, play with my friends, and discover more. My mom has told me Honk is going to put 2 houses down on the field. I think my friends will miss the field if you put the houses there. One more thing for you to know. If you put the houses there, it will wipe away memories. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Olivia. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Miller. All right, next on the list, we've got Tom Bridenstine. Did you want to wait, or did you want to go ahead and speak now? We certainly would welcome you. Okay. Yeah, hit the little red button.
There, is that better, Mr.
Yeah,
Mayor?
that'd
Okay,
be great.
thank you. For the record, my name is Tom Bridenstine. I'm an attorney with the firm of Stites and Harbison. I'm the attorney representing Marcus Carey, who's here tonight, and his wife, Harriet Carey, who owns property at 3814 Dixie Highway. I think you're all probably very familiar with that property. It's located on the west side of Dixie Highway between McAlpin and Price, directly across from St. Henry's Church and School. I'm here not only as their attorney, but I'm also a planner. Before I was an attorney, I have a degree in planning from Miami University. I worked for 7 years as a planner for the Boone County Planning Commission and became a certified planner in that sense during that time as well. I'm going to try to be very brief, and at the conclusion, certainly make ourselves available for questions. But I do want to give you a little bit of an overview of the project, if I may, Mr. Mayor. If you haven't had a chance to review the record that was created before the Planning Commission, you may not know that what we're trying to do. Essentially, what Mr. Carey is trying to do is sell the property, and in that effort, he found that he could not sell the property because of a split zone. The front part of his property, where the house is located, where his current law office is located, is zone NC, Neighborhood Commercial. The property behind his house, behind his garage, is zoned R1F, Single Family Residential. And he has found in those efforts, in his retirement efforts, that nobody wants to buy a property that has a split zone like that. He did eventually find a purchaser of the property, somebody who's interested in developing a small funeral home on the property. And that was entirely consistent with Mr. Carey's and Mrs. Carey's goals for the property: sell it as a whole, sell it to a quiet neighborhood type use, somebody who will be a quiet use for the neighbors, and also, almost as importantly, and maybe even equally as importantly, a use that will maintain the house, the historic house that fronts on Dixie Highway. So we put together an application. Development plan was submitted to the Planning Commission, which held a public hearing in January of this year. That development plan, Mr. Mayor, if you haven't seen it, consists of construction of a relatively small funeral home, 1-story, 7,200 square foot funeral home, to be located directly behind the historic house on Dixie Highway. There's going to be adequate parking for this facility behind the actual funeral home itself. The parking will be paved with a pervious surface in an effort to limit any stormwater runoff that might affect any of the neighbors. It eventually will be surrounded by a landscape buffer according to the requirements of the zoning code. There's no new access points that are proposed for this development. It's strictly intended to have access on the current driveway off of Dixie Highway that serves the actual law office itself. And speaking of the law office, as I mentioned, that house will be maintained and repurposed for an owner, for residence, for the the owner manager of the funeral home. So we haven't decided yet if the two structures will be combined with some sort of a breezeway or other connection, but that's the point that could be developed in the Stage 2 development plan, along with landscape buffering and some of the other finer features. All of the adjoining property owners were notified according to state statute. Planning Commission, of course, posted a sign in the front yard. They published a legal ad. According to all those notices, the Planning Commission then held a hearing, as I said, in January of this year. Only 2 people spoke about this application, besides myself and Mr. Carey. One adjoining commercial property owner actually spoke in favor of this development. The second speaker, who owns property on Price Avenue, residential property on Price Avenue, spoke, not in opposition, Mr. Mayor, but actually just with questions. And I think, and I actually see that young lady here today, if I understood her correctly, she was satisfied with the answers that she received at the hearing and even afterwards. So in short, there's really nobody at all spoke in opposition to this application. Planning Commission then deliberated. You know their process. They ultimately concluded to recommend approval of the zone change. There was 2 bases for the approval. One is that the current zoning is inappropriate and the proposed zoning is appropriate. And secondly, and I think more importantly, the Planning Commission found in no uncertain terms that the amendment is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Those two criteria, I stress, are very important because under KRS 100.213, which sets forth the criteria for zone changes, you only need to meet one of the criteria from the statute. We've met two of the criteria, and therefore led the Planning Commission to make a very strong recommendation of approval. And that's why we're here tonight, Mr. Mayor, is to ask for your approval, ask for an ordinance that adopts the recommendation of the Planning Commission. Mr. Carey, once again, is with me here tonight. I'm not sure that he wants to speak. He's free to speak, of course, but I'll just make ourselves available for any questions, Mr. Mayor and members of council.
All right. Go ahead, Mrs. Pitts.
Is this a current funeral home that already is located in Erlanger, or is it a new one coming in?
This will be a new one.
A new one, okay.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Mrs. Fetty.
It's my understanding that there is currently a landscape buffer that already exists around the property, some trees. Would there be additional landscaping that was added to the plan?
Mr. Mayor, there will be additional landscaping. The final development plan, the Stage 2 development plan, has not been designed yet, but it's been my understanding through my discussions with the architect that every effort will be made to save that buffer. As many of the trees and other shrubs that can be saved will be utilized. I mean, there's a price savings there as well. But then there's also a requirement in the zoning code that a 10-foot buffer be planted whenever commercial property abuts residential property.
All right. Go ahead, Mr. Nicely.
All this is going to be paved, right? All this lot is going to be paved, parking lot.
That's not correct. No, I can show you a development plan. Maybe you didn't have a chance to see it. You know, a good part of it will be, but there's actually going to be a good part of the property behind the actual funeral home itself that will be unpaved.
And there'll be a building, another building on the back site.
There's the funeral home. A good set of parking, enough to match the code. And then a buffer here, buffers on either side.
This is a vacant now.
That's all vacant now.
This is going to be blacktopped.
It will be paved, Mr. Mayor. As I mentioned, though.
Is this going to have lights on it?
I'm sorry?
Lights?
Lights? It will be lighted. But
Well, it's
again,
safer for
Sure.
all the community because right now that is vacant and people can go in there and nobody can see them and rob the houses.
Right. Well, whatever lights are installed, Mr. Mayor, will have to follow the code, and I'm quite certain that the code will be protective of of not just the commercial property, but of the neighboring residential properties.
All right, any other questions? All right, and there is... Yeah, I can, how about when we get through all the other people who've signed up, then you're free to speak. This is, I'll just remind everybody that this is under legislation. The plan is to have a first reading on this property. If there's no other questions, then we'll move on to the next speaker.
Mr. Mayor, you want me to stay then for the legislation section for questions on that? I thought so.
I don't think that's... Oh, yeah.
Okay, very good.
Legislation's at the very end.
All right, I
But yeah,
appreciate
I
that.
definitely recommend staying at least through the other comments. Absolutely.
Well, everybody does things differently, so
Yeah,
we're
don't
happy
go
to
too
stay.
far.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, next, we've got Patrick Kaiser. Or Lisa Kaiser.
Hello, I'm Patrick Kaiser. I am here to ask some questions of the council, Mr. Mayor, council, about the proposed zoning change of the list property. And, you know, the last meeting that I went to, the recommendation was to not change the zoning. And then I guess I missed a meeting, and now it appears to be a recommendation to change the zoning. Is that correct?
That is correct. The last regular council meeting, council had voted to overturn the recommendation of Kenton County Planning Commission and to accept the proposed zone change of the phase one or stage one plan that's been submitted by Dries.
What, I'm sorry that I wasn't here for that meeting, but what changed?
Well, it is all public record, and it's pretty lengthy. I mean, the concerns that have been brought forward between Dries and the city of Erlanger, we've tried to address as many of those as possible, and believe that ultimately the site will be developed. It is zoned for a residential neighborhood subdivision, and that as it's zoned, someone could come in and put really whatever they wanted to in there. They don't have to necessarily come and ask.
But you're changing the zone from a non-cluster zone to a cluster zone. And, when people, like my wife, buy property and they build homes on there, they do it based on the zone that's there. And then it's like starting a football game and changing it halfway through the game. And, the recommendation was pretty firmly against, and then kind of under, you say it's all public record. It seemed to happen pretty quickly that everybody said no, and then all of a sudden everybody says yes, and it was unanimous.
Yeah, so the original recommendation from the Planning and Development Services staff to KCPC was a favorable recommendation. KCPC had decided that evening to not accept it, and it seemed like a lot of their issues were the width of the lots, the distance between the houses, the number of houses on the parcel. Traffic also got brought up. There was a number of other issues as well.
Correct.
Dries addressed a lot of those, and I'm sorry if I don't have every last detail
By
in front of me
increasing
right
the
now.
size of the lots and by reducing the traffic, or?
They did reduce the number of units on the overall site, and they did widen the lots. They increased the width of the lots as well, yes. They also added more landscaping buffer. That was another issue that was brought to our attention.
So that was
And they
what
did-
appears to be a tree line there, so that's nice.
And then did some additional work with connectivity and sidewalks and some of those. Are there any
We
other
think
things
they should
I'm
have done that
missing here?
and
Did I
then
forget?
kept the zoning the same. But
Yeah, I mean, the big part of it, as you know, there are townhomes that are on the site that they are that they're proposing. They're doing that. They are experts in what the market is asking for. These aren't condos.
a mile and a half away from there are some townhomes that have been for sale and unsold now for about a year and a half. So I hope that they're more expert than the other people.
I'm not familiar with that.
By the way, that was built by them as well, so.
Yeah, I mean, these are townhomes that they are proposing. The asking price would be in the 250 to 280 range, I believe, if I remember correctly. And the patio homes that are proposed for the rest of the site are, the patio home term is not a cluster development. The patio home term is something that Dries calls those, and it's more based on the community and the care and maintenance of the outside of the facility, or not the facility, but of the homes being, by, the community. So the lawns are all mowed, the landscaping's taken care of, that's all done as part of the patio home community.
Well, I understand that too. I'm I'm finished. it's just disconcerting to, you know, come and see one kind of recommendation and then all of a sudden it gets overturned and, you know, I'm looking at the map and it doesn't appear to be that much different, so.
It feels like we've been talking about it for a long time. I know it may seem like it was an overnight decision on your side. We've definitely given it a lot of talk and a lot of discussion. These have not been easy decisions. Please.
Is it all right?
Yeah, please.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking a few moments to listen to my questions. My property is adjacent to this property, connects on the back side of my property. I live on Narrows Road, and I have a fairly large piece of property there on Narrows Road.
Mrs. Kaiser, for the record, would you mind just stating your name?
I'm sorry. My name is Lisa Kaiser. My concerns, I had some difficulty. This is my first time interacting with a change of zoning. We, of course, saw this change of zoning sign. We were informed about the Kenton County Planning Commission meeting. I attended that meeting. There was some incorrect information that was a part of the decision, the original decision that the committee there made to approve the plan. And when they learned of the incorrectness of the information, they revised their recommendation to decline to approve, to recommend. So I don't think that you can take their original recommendation and have any value to that, because it was based on incorrect information. And a county employee admitted at that meeting that he had made an error.
I don't know if a lot of our council members were there. I mean, would you be able to talk more about that? What the error was?
It's difficult. I'm not in this field.
Okay.
So.
Okay, I can talk a little bit more about that when you
Yeah.
get,
So if
go
you
ahead.
if
Go
you
ahead.
would like to disclose that, but then just as a citizen, as a resident, then we didn't obtain more information. I was calling repeatedly saying, so now what happens next? There weren't any additional notices of meetings. I did obtain some information about the committee meeting, not the council meeting, but the committee meeting. My husband attended that. Again, we have not heard what these details are that Dries has made changes. It's in your legislation, which is available to me online, that reads, you know, we've considered these arguments, we have added this evidence to the record, but the record isn't online. So I want to know, how do I obtain this? How do I obtain this record? Tonight I have the copy of the map. As one of the questions that my husband asked you was, were the lot sizes changed? And I can tell you just by looking at the map and counting the number of lots that run adjacent to my neighbor's property, the lot sizes are not changed. So if you have more information about that, I would really appreciate that. I would like to understand what those changes are that Dries has made.
Yeah, we covered all this the last special meeting. They did change the lot sizes on the east side of the property on Street A. All those lots were changed between 60 and 70 feet wide. But this was all discussed in the last couple meetings.
So
we've had.
that's not the side of the property near
The opposite,
Mesa?
correct, the opposite
The
side
other
of your
end.
property.
Okay,
Yes.
so no change was made to the size of the properties that would affect myself and my next door neighbor?
Correct.
And those pieces of property are ones which are sized for a mobile home to fit on. And so it will be a situation where, as you presented in one of these other situations, where there's 5 feet of property between the home and the property line. And I want you to just all think of your own properties and having 5 feet of land between a house and a property line. The zoning that was originally set up for this property, there was a reason for it. And I understand that we want to support development, and I'm not against development, but I am against changing the zoning just because somebody wants to. Just because this developer wants to put more homes in there and create these smaller lots and change the setbacks, et cetera, we don't have to do that. And it doesn't mean that the property will never be developed. So I just want you to consider. I see.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
have a couple of the changes listed here, if you want me to share them with her. Okay. Some of the changes that Dries compromised, they listened to, came to a couple of the meetings where residents spoke, and they listened to some of their concerns and our concerns up here, and these are some of the things they worked with us on. Like he said, on the east, was it the east side, that are going to have the wider lots. The total homes went from 160 to 157. That's going to be 11 townhomes and like 113 patio homes. The townhomes are all going to be one level with walkout basements. There's not going to be two-story townhomes. They also signed that they have to stick to the plan. They're going to put, what do you call it, basement brick wraparound on the homes facing the roads. They're putting conceptual landscaping, buffering all the units along, and they're going to have 42% green space. And they also agreed to comply with findings or conclusions as recommended by the traffic study on Phase 2. They really did work with us on a lot of things, and several of us live right there. It's going to impact us too, and it was very hard for all of us to decide this. But in the end, we thought, we know there's not going to be more than 157 homes there, and we have some say in what they look like. And you can somebody can still put patio homes in there, and they could be all vinyl, and they could put more streets in. 42% green space is huge.
Did you realize that that green space is being dictated by the lay of the land? Because there's a ravine and a
Right.
lake on that property already. So they're trying to say that that's a great benefit to us, but the reality is it's just too difficult to build homes on that part of the property. So all they're doing by having these small lots over on, against my property is saying, wow, we're going to put a bunch of green space in, and then we're going to jam a bunch of houses over here. So I appreciate that they've made some changes to improve things, that they have agreed to more trees along the, kind of to block, you can see that on the map, and that if they've changed the properties to be larger on that east side.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the west side? What about us? Why, again, do we have to approve something? Take a look at the map and count 14 new neighbors next to my neighbor. 14 new neighbors. Not a new backyard neighbor, not 2, not 3, 14. So it's really unpleasant that they're using these tiny little lots there. So I think that you've made great progress, but I would ask that you not approve it as it is set, and that you continue to develop the plan and just work a little bit more on that section that they have not adjusted and have not changed. And that would be my plea to you. Mayor, would you
thank
like
you.
to discuss the situation with the errors that were made?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, the error was in that he had written something to the effect that the proposed zone was the same as what was in Lakemont, whereas that was not correct. It was actually PUD in Lakemont, which is actually more of a commercial type zone, and knowing that there was no intent to ever do anything commercial, they came back and said it really is the right zone for what
Right.
they're asking for.
So they were saying, they were using it as a justification that in the past, the zoning had been changed, and so therefore, why not do it again?
But
Whereas-
PDS did not withdraw their recommendation. That wasn't part of the process.
I was at that meeting, and they did withdraw their recommendation.
Kenton County Planning Commission
Yes, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear that
did
you
not
said
accept the,
PDS.
yeah, PDS, Planning Development Services, did not withdraw their
Okay.
recommendation.
So.
Okay, thank you. Oh,
Thank you very
was it-
much for
okay.
listening. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mrs. Kyle.
I don't have all the papers in front of me that I did at the last meeting, so it's going to be kind of sketchy. But I did do my homework in checking on the different zonings. And the zone that could go in there still has 5 feet between the houses, believe it or not. That's the regular residential zoning. I didn't even check with David Hahn, has the 5-foot. Right, you have a 5-foot on either side. That is in the zoning. And I forget the name of the zone that is. It's not the cluster, but the regular zoning. And our thinking was that we can control this because we are making some concessions. And I really don't want to see a vinyl thing going in there. People that are just going to come in and just build slipshod houses. You know, and they can. There's nothing we can do about that. This we can control, and the townhouses, are going to look nice. And as the mayor told you, everything is controlled by the homeowners association as far as the outside is concerned. And you can go to other developments that he has done in Florence and other counties, not counties, but other cities, and they're quite lovely. And I don't think that it's going to bring down the value of your homes. I really don't. But that was our thinking, that at least we have somebody coming in that we can control, whereas if we don't do this, you can have anybody come in there, they can build houses 5 feet, and you can check with our codes guy, he's here tonight, and I forget the name of the zone, but that's the regular residential zone, and I wasn't aware of that either, but I looked it up, and I saw that 5 feet in there, and I'm like, okay, there it is. That's right. Yeah, but that's,
I'm Mr. Kaiser again.
Thanks.
To be on the microphone here and carry my wife's point forward, even under the zone that you want to change it to, it's my understanding after reading the codes that these lots are still too small for that zone.
no. No, I did my homework on the zones. I brought both of them side by side.
Then if the lots are not too small for that kind of zone, then it shouldn't be changed to that kind of zone, because these are super tiny lots. And the houses may be pretty and have brick, but, I've seen streets with pretty brick houses that are all real, 5-10 feet apart from each other, and it looks terrible.
Well, the ones in our neighborhood are basically like that, so I hope you don't think our houses are beautiful.
It's all about taste, I guess. I mean, I like to see grass and trees, and other people like to see pretty brick houses all lined up, but, I'm not one of those people. And neither would someone who may want to buy the property that we have. Just looking at it, I can foresee $200,000 to $300,000 in value drop on our property by having
But unfortunately, that's still going to happen.
next-door neighbors.
It's still going to happen, I mean, because anybody can go in there and they still have the 5-foot whatever, and the square footage. I mean, it's basically the same
Mrs.
in the
Fetty-
regular zone, so.
Sorry, excuse me.
All right.
Mrs.
finished.
Fetty, did you have something else?
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is if you're familiar with Lakemont at all. So I live in Lakemont, and when we're talking about the patio homes on the left side, if you are familiar with Crestbourne or Winbourne, those houses are very similar to what would be going in here. If you're familiar with Eastbourne, which is the newer part in the very back, Those lot sizes are between 70 and 60 feet wide, which is very, very similar to what is going to be going on the east side. And then the townhomes, the single family, those are Ridgeborn. So if you're familiar with Lakemont at all, or if you have some time, take a look back there. So it's a very similar type of community to what exists in Lakemont already.
Okay, we've got other people that are signed up to speak this evening. Mr. Meyer, Gary Meyer? Okay. Mr. Taylor, Ben Taylor? Okay. And then we had one other, would you like to speak about the funeral home parcel? Please come up to the stand and state your name, please.
My name is Claudia Harmling, and I live on Price Avenue. I was concerned, I noticed he said that the plans are still being redesigned and changed. At the meeting in January, I did go there because I had a question, because the original code said you can't have a building, you have to have 50 feet space buffer between private homes and business. And they're changing it down to 10 feet. So with that 10 feet at the end of my property, they're saying they're still going to have a 10-foot buffer, and then there's going to be, I'm assuming, a road driving in. So I'm still concerned, how is this going to, what are the final plans? How is this going to affect my property when I go to sell mine, having a funeral home 10 feet from my property line? And he's saying eventually they'll put the buffers in. Well, when is eventually? And the traffic coming in and out of Dixie Highway, I believe they said they were going to make that 3 lanes coming in so that there's room to come in and pull around. So I still do have concerns about how is this going to be constructed? What's it going to do to our property values? And I know any business can have a chance of making it or not making it, but we've already got 1 new funeral home in the area. Now this is going to be a 5th funeral home within a mile and a quarter. What happens if it doesn't make it? I mean, I hope it does. If you decide to put it in, I'd still like to see the field back there myself, but if you do decide to put it in, what happens if it doesn't make it? Can another business come in if you're making an exception for the funeral home? Can you make it a business for a General Dollar to go in there, or we have a lot of auto mechanic stuff along Dixie Highway in Erlanger, something like that to go back in there. So I still do have concerns about what's it going to be like. Am I going to have a building 10 feet from my property, or a road, and then the building? So I still do have concerns about it.
Okay, so Mr. Hahn is in the back of the room there, and so is Mr. Bridenstine. And I'd ask that you speak with them about, because we didn't necessarily have any kind of presentation ready to be able to even show you on that, what the plan is. And if, tonight, what the plan is to have a first reading of that. There has to be a second reading as well. So if they don't answer your questions or, make you feel comfortable with what the decisions are, you'll have time to still contact us.
That's fine.
And let
Okay,
us know.
thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Harmling.
Ma'am, let me ask you one question. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, your concern mostly is because you have a detached garage in the back, right? Because then it would be 10 feet from that for the most part, because it's right on the edge, is that
Well,
right?
I've got about 2 feet from behind the garage.
Okay.
And then it would start the property. Now, my concern is, I'm glad I've got the detached garage back there, because then it'll block some of the view.
Right.
But having a road or right at the edge of that property, or, what kind of traffic is going to be coming in and out. I know you don't have a funeral every day, but when you do, you've got the traffic coming through. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hahn, if you wouldn't mind waving so that Mrs. Harmling sees. That'd be the guy to speak to, and then Mr. Bridenstine's right in front of him.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I totally understand why Mr. Carey wants a zone change, because having a property that has two different zones would have to be a nightmare to try to sell. But is there any way we could get some type of plan to see before the second reading? Would that be okay? Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Mrs. Dietz. Ms. Dietz, excuse me.
My name is Linda Dietz. I live on Price Avenue, and Claudia is a neighbor of mine. In fact, the only reason she knew about this being spoken about tonight is I told her about it. Apparently, Marcus Carey and his attorney/architect said that, well, we'll let you know when things get approved. We'll let you know when the next step is. And they never mentioned the fact they were going to come up here and speak to here, and that other people could come up too. So I want that on the record. I also want on the record that the business that approved this is Mr. Nicely's business, Nicely's Appliance. So you're in favor of it, which is fine, but I think the honorable thing that we do when it comes to a vote, you abstain from voting because of the conflict of interest. This will benefit your business. So I hope you will do the honorable thing and abstain from that vote. As far as you're concerned, Mr. Nicely, about the area not being lit up, you don't live around that area, and the people who live there are fine with it not being lit up in their backyards, having lights up in their backyards all night long. So there's no crime, extra crime in that area. It's a very safe neighborhood because of the safe neighbors and our fine police department who takes care of us. So that's not a concern of anybody who lives in that area. Mr. Carey's attorney spoke incorrectly when he said that the resident did not have any concerns, and she does. In fact, now that you, Mr. Nicely, have a copy of the plan, it would be nice if the attorney would give Ms. Harmeling a copy of the plan as well tonight, to be fair. Let me check what my next point was. I agree with Ms. Harmeling. They talked about eventually the landscaping will come. Well, we took a lot of effort to make sure the Dries was going to provide all that information up front for the people in the Brightleaf area. There's no reason why this can't be done now for the people in the Price Avenue and McAlpin area. You make them come up with those details now and when they're going to do it. And if there's a phase 2 to this plan, develop phase 2 before phase 1 is approved. There's no reason why the people on Price Avenue and McAlpin do not deserve. And Vicki Kyle has a correct point. Let's find out what they're going to do, get what we want before we approve it. And for that reason, I would ask council to table the reading of this, the first reading of this ordinance, because I do believe you have to have the second reading within a certain number of days.
Yeah, actually, that's incorrect. So.
Well, it wasn't when we did the
Right, well,
whole
this
agency
is
thing
a
over
different
there.
situation. So in this situation, the Kenton County Planning Commission has recommended approval.
Right.
So this body has 90 days to overturn that
Okay.
by a majority. So if we tabled it, in essence, the zone change would pass by a matter of law.
Okay, because what date did they approve it?
January 4th.
Okay. All right, well, I really.
So we are in a completely opposite situation to the Dries situation.
Okay. So if it is not approved, does that mean they can never come back and do it again? If, in other words, you make Marcus Carey, and Marcus Carey knew this property was zoned this way when he bought it. This was a frontal property. It was a family property. It ran all the way back between Price and McAlpin. Part of it, the Rule family kept. Part of it, they sold with their front property. So they knew it was different. They knew they were going to have to do something. So it's not like, oh boy, I can't sell my property. They knew it. I'm sure someone would buy it, but they knew that. So that's no excuse to make the change. I do think the main point, because as Ms. Claudia said, she hasn't been given much information about it. If there's a way to make them make the final plans, make all of that available, the landscaping, and not have it going eventually, and if you don't pass it, and let them bring it up another time once they've done all these details, just like the Dries Company did, what's fair is fair, there's no reason not to go that direction. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
I was speaking before on that we do own a piece of property, joining. Right now, it's not safe for people to be living there for break-ins, because you go up the driveway There's trees on it. They can come over, nobody sees them. We've been broke in once that way. And it's a benefit for all the people that live the backyard that goes down this stretch. As to what we're going to gain for it, we're not going to gain, but right now it's grown up and kids can go back there and party in the trees. They have.
Okay.
And right now, if they come along and develop it, make a parking lot, they're going to have it lit up. Somebody's going to have activities up there all the time. So that's the reason I come along, not show no partiality.
Okay.
And
Right.
we could ask the police department, go up and see what they think about the safety having that developed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nicely. All right, we don't have anybody else signed up to speak. We do? Okay, welcome. Go ahead and state your name.
Hi, my name is Ian Whitus, and I live on 432 Division on the corner. I'm here to support Ann Miller, and we've got some neighbors here as well. I think she did a pretty good job at covering kind of the concerns regarding the honk housing. You know, I am, against building on that lot. You know, I prefer, I have the basketball courts behind my lot. In an ideal world, I would prefer, instead of basketball courts, put playgrounds or whatever. But I believe Ann did a good job covering everything. However, I did have one question. I tried searching it, during the meeting. In regards to honk housing, are there criminal background checks? What is the process that they go through to go to these families and award them with this housing?
Dave, I don't even remember. I know they do background checks, but I don't know the depth of them. No, we don't have that here.
Is there a way to get that information?
Yeah, I'm sure we can call them if they'll acknowledge that, but I don't know if that's something that they would even put out publicly. But I don't know. I'm sure we could.
Okay. I mean, I think there's got to be, or even if there's a number, I'm more than happy to call to speak to somebody. But I'm just concerned with.
I still think there's a stigma that's going on about the lower to moderate income people, that not necessarily all of them have criminal histories, and we don't do any kind of background checks on every citizen that purchases a home in that area either. So I don't know if that would be even a fair thing to state.
Well, I mean, there's upper class people that have felonies and
Correct.
everything. But my request is, I want to find out what the process is. And if you could provide me that, it would be appreciated.
Yeah,
Sure thing. Okay, thank you very much.
thank you. All right, Mrs. Miller, you've had a chance to speak. Is there something new that you plan on to address? Okay. Okay, well, I mean, I guess what I would like to do is I'd like to go ahead and open it up to council. If there is there a motion? Do we have a motion? No, I'm asking if there's a motion to go ahead and table this bid. If there's a motion now. Oh, okay. When is that on? Okay, that's just a long time. Okay, we're going to move on with the agenda for the evening here. There, more information is going to be brought to light on the Division Street property as we go. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the mayor's report. this is the time of year where we begin to talk about the goals for the upcoming year. But a couple things that I wanted to mention ahead of time is this is Kathy Cahill's birthday today. Happy birthday, Kathy. And Renee Skidmore just celebrated a birthday on Sunday, correct? So happy birthday. All right. All right. We've got a ribbon cutting ceremony that's coming up on March 22nd at 11 a.m. for Furlong Building Construction. And we've gotten word here recently that the Toyota office building has been purchased by Corporex, and they're looking for a 200,000 square foot user for that building. We recently had the first coffee with a cop, and it was a success, as anyone who attended would attest. And I don't think we have another one on the schedule just yet, but I know the chief is working on scheduling the next one. We've gotten some public comments, regarding the garbage cans on Stevenson Road. Thank you, Mrs. Fetty and Public Works for getting that done, and thank you to Morgan Samad, who originally had requested that. There is a mayor's group meeting that's coming up in Fort Mitchell, at the Fort Mitchell City Building on March 17th at 9 a.m. Those are public meetings, but usually hard to attend, being that the location changes each month. An interesting fact here that we've learned recently, SD1 Sanitation District has received an application from Amazon for the use of 300,000 gallons per day. That's equivalent to 15,000 employees. Amazon and the associated businesses have a choice of locating in Erlanger or near Erlanger. I'd like to give them every reason to choose Erlanger instead of Boone County. So with that, Sherry, do you have the city goals presentation? I wasn't necessarily wanting to get up at the podium, but is the clicker up there? I'll do it up there. I'll try to go through it relatively quickly. I know that we've had a long meeting already, and council's seen a lot of this already. So the road ahead. In an effort to make the advancements for our city, we've assembled our thoughts and goals of the mayor, city council, and department heads. This is creating a benchmark for our budget, and also gives us guidelines for allocating the resources. This is going to give us our strategic direction over the next year, and it's something that we'll refer to from time to time. So the budget goals would be to balance the budget, reduce the real and tangible property taxes, and cut the spending of each department by 1% through finding efficiencies and allocating money for the repairs of city property. We want to keep happy, healthy, productive, long-term employees, instituting a wellness plan, turning healthcare insurance savings into employee bonuses, and developing incentives other than pay rate increases. We want to efficiently and effectively deliver our city services, figuring out how to say yes when we're asked a question, and developing tax incentives for homeowners and small businesses. Ultimately, we want more employees to live inside the city. We want our businesses to call Erlanger home for the location, the labor pool, the amenities, and the value. We plan on having a business spotlight on our website, not just at our council meetings, small business tax incentives, and increasing the opportunities for those businesses to contribute to the community. Mr. Cahill said we need to set us a punch list and action items in relation to the facility study, which is actually something that is included in the budget. We've included $500,000 this upcoming year to make some of the many needed repairs. Developing a plan for the repairs of Stevenson Road, and we are working on the storyboard concept right now to try to help get the state's attention to pay attention to their street, and improving the Dixie Highway traffic patterns. Thank you, Mr. Cahill. Mrs. Kyle said, being a voice of the people, attracting new businesses, assisting existing businesses, and making Erlanger a better place to live. Thank you, Mrs. Kyle. Mr. Montgomery said, work on business and homeowner incentives and focusing on the improvement of Stevenson Road. Thank you, Mr. Montgomery. Mrs. Fetty said, creating an Erlanger Business Association, creating an angel program for our police social worker, and evaluating new software that can increase efficiency of city operations. Thank you, Mrs. Fetty. Mrs. Pitts said, keep first responders safe, pay attention to the Houston and Stevenson roads, increase the budget on street repairs, something that we're speaking about this evening regarding the Dries development and the intersection of Narrows and Narrows and Nelson, we would be actually increasing the street repair budget from last year. Making sure we maintain the financial reserves, which we've done, developing welcome packet to new residents and businesses, installing free library boxes on higher traffic pedestrian routes. I love that idea. I've seen that around. Exploring green incentives to make the city more financially efficient. Thank you, Mrs. Pitts. Mrs. Skidmore said, resolving more of the open collection accounts and controlling fines and penalties on Erlanger taxpayers. Excellent. Thank you. Mrs. Cahill said, decide on a fire station location, something that we've been working on for a long time, talking about and kicking around, and finding a community center grant. Thank you. Mr. Burke said, keeping our citizens safe, safe equipment for police and fire, and clean up Erlanger, especially the rentals. Thank you, Mr. Burke. Mrs. Sedkamp focused on one thing, focus on a civic center. Thank you, Mrs. Sedkamp. Mr. Nicely said, focus on Stevenson Road repairs and improvement. Thank you, Mr. Nicely. Our staff goals, Mr. Bogard from Public Works said, evaluating personnel needs with projected growth of the city, make pay scale of public work employees comparable to police and fire EMS, establish a plan to repair and improve the facilities. That's come up multiple times, as you've noticed. Continuing the sidewalk repairs and replacement, and continuing with infrastructure improvements identified in the 4-year plan, all of which we are budgeting for. Continuing pay increases for, this is Chief Whitaker. Continuing pay increases for continued competitiveness, continue efforts toward full-time only department, come to a decision on fire station number 1, whether we renovate or rebuild it. Surplus excess equipment, truck 60, engine 51 and 53. Those are being replaced with 2 new engines. Develop a succession plan, develop a plan for increased community service, develop a plan for employee physical fitness, and synchronize the IT database. Thank you, Chief. Mr. Christofield said, find better ways to communicate with residents and businesses. Publish the city events for the entire year, which I believe he's already done, and create new city map street index. Thank you, Mr. Christofield. Chief Brendel said, improve the communications with the community, improve training, and develop succession planning, stay at the forefront of technology to assure safety of our officers, and navigate the transition of the dispatch needs. Our city clerk, Mrs. Hoffman, said, restructure the department to account for anticipated retirements and input rental property information into the building department software. Thank you, Mrs. Hoffman. Mr. Hahn said, get SmartGov or a similar type of program up and running. Update the webpage to advertise economic development and tax incentives, and promote one of the code officers up to a level 1 building inspector. Thank you, Mr. Hahn. He's not down there. He stepped out. Mr. Bodie said, develop duties, procedures, and policies of the finance department, and develop an RFP for selecting an auditing firm. Thank you, Mr. Bodie. Mr. Allen, our IT director, said, support the technology needs of all departments and improve communications with the public through technology, like live streaming, which we're doing tonight. So our next steps, it's council to pick an item on the list and begin to make it happen, for the staff to work to accomplish our goals, bring it up at the next council committee meeting, and public, if there's something you find of interest, please contact the mayor or council member with the idea to get involved. That's it. Thank you so much for listening to that again. Yeah, ultimately, there's very few businesses that succeed on accident, and if we don't have the plan, it's hard to follow the map. So next up, we've got under public safety, the reports of our committees, public safety, police, Mrs. Sedkamp, Mrs. Kyle.
Sorry, everybody. Okay, I'll make it short and sweet. I would like to request a committee meeting and discuss the school zone. I don't know if many of you are aware, but we've been having numerous accidents involving our school children at Commonwealth and Baker, and it's become a very deep concern to everybody. And I said to Mr. Kramer, I said, probably 60+% of the people that travel down Commonwealth Avenue have no clue that that's a school zone. And we have a lot of children that cross there, and many of them, as most kids are, have their heads up you know where and don't pay attention and, you know, do stupid things, as children sometimes do. So I'm just trying to bring awareness to the fact that that is a school crossing zone, and I have requested Mr. Kramer to apply to the state to get some kind of safety measures in that school zone. You know, lights, we have lights on Dixie Highway for St. Henry, we got lights on Turkey Foot for, you know, the middle school and there. So hopefully they've got it all planned out and it'll go forth, and if we save just one life, it'll be well worth it.
All right, we'll make sure we get that on the committee
Thank
agenda.
you. Thank you.
And I don't want to be repetitious, but I do want to welcome our new hires tonight. And you all got to meet them tonight. We're proud of all of them. And also, I was at the first Coffee with a Cop, and I have to say it was an excellent event. I thought it was very worthwhile. I met some of my co-citizens, and yeah, I just think it's a really nice thing for the PR for the police. And there's one incident that I did want to report on, and I'll keep it brief. Our detectives made an arrest on a carjacking that occurred on Elm and Graves. The lady was getting out of her car. He took her keys and took her car, and they actually did a little background and actually caught the guy who did this. So we want to say kudos to our detectives for that. Other than that, Assistant Chief Rader, anything to add?
All right, thank you. Next, we've got Fire EMS, Mrs. Pitts, Mrs. Fetty.
Chief's on his way up.
All right.
They're deferring that to me now. Everyone in the city receives our monthly report. We also post it on our website. So in order to kind of get these things moving, if anybody has any questions, I'm always here in the back of the room, and anybody that would like another email to their inbox, I will gladly send you a copy of our monthly report. But if there are no questions, I'm just going to leave it at that from now on, if that's fine.
All right. Thank you, Chief.
Question. Thank you.
Next, we've got Public Works, Mr. Cahill, Mr. Skidmore.
Yeah, we'd just like to say that actually we talked about the sidewalk project, that phase 1 has been started on Sunset Avenue, so we're getting that on moving up ahead. You'd mentioned birthdays, and Mr. Milliken back here will be celebrating one, and so will Mike Grizel. And also, Ralph Sidnor is our highlighted employee of the month for Public Works, and he's in the back there, so we'll just wave to him. So,
He's watching us on video.
yeah, he's a jack of all trades, that's for sure, for the city. So we just want to recognize him for that, being from that standpoint. And that's all we have, Mr. Milligan.
All right, thank you. And next, we've got administration, Mrs. Skidmore, Mrs. Cahill. They're looking at Mrs. Hoffman. Do you have your microphone on?
Sorry. I just want to give an update on the hiring process for our front desk clerk position. We received 35 applications, so we've started the interview process. That'll take place on March 14th. We're also accepting applications for the city's annual scholarship. It's a $1,500 scholarship for a 2- or 4-year college or technical school. Those are due March 9th. And the applicants must be residents of the city of Erlanger. Our applications are available here at the city, online, and at the schools. And then finally, we are having our annual Star Party on March 24th at Flagship Park from 8 to 9:30 p.m. This is when the Cincinnati Observatory comes to the park. They bring their telescopes, and this year they're saying that not only will we get close-up views of the moon, but Orion, and as darkness falls, the planet Venus. So that's all we have scheduled.
Excellent. It's one of my favorite events. You know, seeing Jupiter, seeing Saturn, the International Space Station. I mean, it's incredible. The nebulas, and it's really amazing. All right.
Mayor, I do think that,
Oh, there is another. Okay.
yeah, Kathy and Renee have something else.
Okay. The Administration Department has requested changes to the job descriptions of its employees. The Police Department has submitted a job description for the newly created position of TAC Officer Crime Analyst. I make a motion to have the reading of a municipal order to amend the city's personnel policies by amending the job descriptions to reflect the requested changes and addition.
All right, good. We've got a motion and a second by Mrs. Cahill. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carried.
I also have, the Administration Department has requested to change the city's wage scale ordinance. They would like to move the position of the front desk clerk from B and K to band K to band M. The Police Department would like to add the position of TAC Officer / Crime Analyst to band K, a position to be filled at a later date. I make the motion to have the first reading of an ordinance to amend the city's wage scale ordinance to reflect the requested change and addition.
All right,
I'll
we've got a
second
motion
that.
and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carried. All right, if there's nothing else, then we'll move on to the Finance and Business Development. Mr. Blankenship, Mr. Montgomery.
Thank you. We had our annual budget meeting on Saturday, and putting the draft of that budget together is a tremendous undertaking by the staff. The department has especially put in a lot of time to assemble the document so that council can have the data we need to make an informed decision, and I want to thank all of them for all the efforts they put in. I want to especially thank Steve Bodie back there, who was here until about 3 o'clock on Saturday morning, so that we could putting the final touches on the document that we could review in a few hours later. So I appreciate all the work they put in. The budget is always a difficult issue, but it's especially tricky this year, mostly because of the CERS pension increase issue. The state has mandated a 12% increase in the city's pension costs this year. That adds $207,000 to our budget expenses that's just being imposed upon us. And also, as the mayor mentioned at the budget meeting on Saturday, we do have the potential loss of Kroger's that could occur. This may not happen anytime in the near future, but as the mayor pointed out, Kroger's has purchased the Kmart property in Edgewood and may at some point be moving, which would cost the city one of its largest taxpayers. So these issues kind of complicate what's always a major concern in finalizing the budget, and that's setting the tax rate. The draft budget that Steve put together assumes a 2% reduction in the property tax rates. And to put that in perspective, that's a 2% reduction reduces the city's revenues by about $83,000 a year. To a homeowner, a 2% reduction means we'd save $7 per $100,000. So if you have a house worth $100,000, you save $7 a year. If you have a house worth $200,000, you save $14 a year. So I like tax cuts. I think we all like to see tax cuts, but I think one thing we have to look at is whether the time is right for it. And that's an issue I want the council's input on. We have not really, that was put in as an assumption, which is fine, but we haven't really discussed that issue, so I'd like to get input from the rest of council as to how they feel about that 2% assumption. Dave Hahn's been working very hard to bring in new businesses, and especially in the showcase property with the TIF district, and there may be times where we want to expand the TIF district even further. But once those new businesses come in and they start generating some revenues, maybe we can then look for providing even more substantial tax relief. I'd like to see us look at, once that new revenues come in, maybe trying to lower or phase out the 3% franchise fee or lower the insurance premium tax. Those would put a lot more money in people's pockets than would be simply the 2%. So, this is a tough call every year on what we do with our tax rates. And so I'd just like to hear what the council thinks about that, whether we move forward with that assumption or if we don't.
Is this something that we would like to put on the agenda for the committee meeting?
We can do it at committee, or they can make
That'd
comments.
probably
It's fine
be-
with me either way.
That'd probably be appropriate.
It's just something we need to hear some input on.
Sure. We'll go ahead and add it to the agenda of the committee meeting.
Thank you. Yeah, that'd be good. And that's all I have. Steve?
Okay.
Steve, Bodie's here.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we've got codes, building, and zoning. Mr. Burke, Mr. Nicely. Make sure your mic's on, please, Mr. Burke.
Last meeting, we talked about Big Shots going over here at Vioxx Road. The owner of Big Shots is now talking to the landowner that's in behind there. So Dave's going to keep us updated on that situation. The next thing I got, well, I was going to talk about the Marcus Carey property, but I think that's been pretty well covered. So the only thing I've got is like to make a motion for first reading tonight.
It is on the agenda. So we will come to that in legislation. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so a motion for a first meeting. Do we have a second? A second by Mrs. Pitts. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carried.
I've got a couple more. I got.
Okay, please.
Need to set up a meeting, a committee meeting, and I think Mr. Kramer's going to explain what it's about here.
Yeah, the add to the committee meeting would be to discuss the small cell phone tower ordinance to put into effect. So I've got a sample ordinance we'll send out and discuss it at the committee meeting.
Okay. We'll add that to the agenda.
And Mr. Hahn is in the house. Dave, you got anything? Oh, thank you. You got anything? Yeah. He's got, Mr. Nicely's got.
Go ahead,
something,
Mr.
please.
Nicely.
Ready? Yep. I know we should have a solution. This last week, we're going to go to the corner of Timberlake and Alice. Okay? There was a semi, from what I understand, was too tall to go under the underpass. Someone detoured him up to Hallam, to Elizabeth, to Timberlake. But when he got onto Timberlake, he had to go in a person's yard to make the turn. Then he come down to make the left turn onto Alice, and he tore heck out of the yard there. And I would invite all council members to go over and look at it. And what I suggest, some way we put a sign up, and this was a tractor trailer. No trucks through there, and put more signs up and something to cause, because I want all council to take a drive over there and look at this corner. It's the worst that I've ever seen. and I think he got stuck.
Mr. Kramer informed me that Public Works has been made aware, and we've been talking with Public Works already about signage, about the
Do we got
signage.
anything, anybody know the name of the carrier? Anybody talk to anybody over there? We can find that out, we can call them.
Yeah, I don't know that the police were called.
I did ask the police department, but police had no report of it. The yard went in, nobody was at home. But at this time, though, it wasn't really my property. The property is 101 Timberlake. Now I own 101, okay? So it is mine now.
Okay.
And I did not find out anyone that made a report on it, and no one, I don't know anything on it.
Well, I'll address it with Public Works, and I'll email you what the outcome is on the signage and everything.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hahn's in the house.
He's good.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, Mrs. Camp.
Well, I was just going to say, there's no way that the signage is going to help. We have a sign on Graves Avenue, no semis. My neighbors has lost her electricity 3 different times from the idiots driving these trucks that cannot read. You can't fix stupid.
You know what you can do? You know what we could do? We could put a sign in there, it says 10-foot bridge, and they won't go that way.
Then you're gonna put Timberlake.
No, put it right there where they get to Timberlake, make them
Yeah.
back in there and turn
And
around.
then there's our hell out of our yard over there.
And I know one gentleman from the audience recommended you put boulders in the yard.
There you go.
So there you go. That'll do it.
But I think, though,
They only make that mistake once, right? All right. Can we move on? Okay. Anything else on, Mr. Hahn, do you have anything further to report? I think he's shaking his head no. All right, you've heard the reports of our committees. Do I entertain a motion that they be adopted as presented? A motion by Mrs. Pitts, a second by Mrs. Kyle. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. All right, motion carried. Next is the report of our representatives. Are there any representatives that would like to report this evening? Mrs. Kyle, I saw your hand first.
Yes, the Historical Society, the volunteers still are meeting every Thursday from 10 a.m. till noon to help with the 2018 projects. Everyone is invited, so if you have a free Thursday, come and join us at 3313 Crescent Avenue at the Depot Museum. We have received $1,025 for the Jack Shaban Memorial. Jack always wanted a kiosk in the park with a little history to share our upcoming events. We will do a dedication of the kiosk at the 2018 Heritage Day. So yeah, that is neat. And the museum will finally open to visitors on Tuesday, March the 20th, the first day of spring, from noon until 3. The museum is open Tuesdays and Thursdays from 12 until 3, and then Saturdays from noon until 5. And the caboose is only open on Saturday from noon to 3. And the next meeting is March 14th, and we plan to do a little history on the Irish in our area. And so that meeting will take place March 14th at 7 p.m. at the Depot. That's it.
All right, thank you. Any other reports of representatives? I saw Mr. Cahill's hand next.
I'm just trying to get in before you, Renee. So. All right. Northern Kentucky Health Department is going to have an open house for their new building on the 14th, next Wednesday, from 3 to 5. So anybody's welcome to come see the new health department. I went through orientation the other day. It's really nice. Going to do a lot of good for the community. So if you get a chance to come down and see that.
Thank you, Mr. Cahill. Mrs. Fetty?
I attended the Canton County Mayor's Group meeting a couple of Saturdays ago, and John Bischoff is a representative from the Boy Scouts of America. To go along with the talk about the Explorer program that is done in the police department, they also have a social work Explorer program. And this is something that's new to them. And I was seeing if we could have him come and speak. There's some documentation about the program, but it might be something that we're interested in developing a little more. Have a team of teenagers that are assisting our social worker would be pretty awesome.
Are you thinking speak at a council meeting? Or
Yeah, just to explain the program, how it would work,
Okay.
maybe how other cities are doing it. I think it's only being done in a couple other cities, so no one local, but he
Okay.
might have an example to explain to us.
And you're thinking maybe the next committee meeting?
I mean, if that's okay, unless we want to push it to the following committee, since it seems like we're
Okay.
packing that one in.
Would you be open to contacting him?
Yep.
Okay.
I'll reach out to him. He's already emailed me a couple of times and
Great.
wants to get some more information from us.
Thank you. All right, Mrs. Skidmore, I know you haven't been putting your hand up, but I know you want to say something.
I've got you trained, don't I?
Yeah.
A little bit. Okay. The Kenton County Alliance had their meeting today. We talked about the superhero recognition of youth involvement. Lloyd, Holmes, Scott, Beechwood, and Notre Dame participated. The Notre Dame students worked together as a group and came up with their superhero designs. And some of the students came up with slogans for drug-free, and some of the students wrote essays. Slogans were, I have a bright future in front of me. I have a lot I want to accomplish. I want to spend quality time with my family, and I have big plans for my future. This was a school-wide project, and it really went over fairly well. And the Notre Dame group, like I said, they all worked together and came up with one project. And then the other schools had individuals, and they came up with their own individual project. And it's also time for Sticker Shock, or Sticker the Liquor, which we call it. It's usually done around prom time. National Prescription Drug Day is Saturday, April the 28th from 10 to 2. And they've now determined that schizophrenia has increased 33% in kids who used marijuana in their early teens. And this next little information was written in the paper or the magazine kind of that the library puts out and that Kenton County puts out. It says Tank Bus was named the best transit system in Kentucky at the Kentucky Public Transit Association meeting. This included the categories use of technology, listens to the needs of the community, maintains an outstanding fleet of buses and shows commitment to improvement. And then Todd Rice is our police social worker kind of representative. So he actually attended the Kenton County Alliance, convention at the White House, or at the Capitol, the Capitol. So I'm not going to read the whole report. I'm just going to read what I highlighted. It'll just hit most of it. I read it to myself and read it out loud. It takes 3 minutes, okay? And give me 2 before you start. Okay. The conference boasted that they had 3,000 attendees. This included not only professionals and local leaders from all over the United States and international leaders, it included a large youth involvement. Todd was able to attend at least 10 training sessions. Each one was very informative, and the speakers were some of the best that he had ever heard. He and Diane, that's Diana O'Toole, she's in charge of the Kenton County Alliance, were able to meet with a representative from Senator Rand Paul's office, Senator Mitch McConnell's office, and Representative Thomas Massey's office to discuss issues related to the CADCA, that's Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America, mission, and to present to them a clock from the Kenton County Alliance and material related to our particular coalition. They also presented the drawings submitted to them by our local high schools, and the drawings will be turned into banners to hang. High schools in Kenton County are teaming up to prevent substance abuse. They were able to listen to Mr. McConnell announce to the Kentucky group in the hallway between the House and the Senate that he had just worked out a deal with Senator Schumer from New York to triple the funding for prevention and law enforcement in the fight against opiate abuse from $2 billion to $6 billion. Opioid pills being legally prescribed result in 80% of the reason individuals turn to heroin. Discussions on the effects of marijuana and the great lie that is being told and how it is affecting our youth. New studies of how there is approximately a 33% increase of individuals becoming schizophrenia if they consume marijuana in their teens. There were several other PSAs from Canada and a story that was shared by department members already on opiate abuse. It's called the SMAC epidemic. It addresses teenage use, misuse, and abuse, especially in student athletes. Those of us with children, it should be a mandatory read, especially when they are going to be treated for pain as a result of any surgery, especially wisdom tooth removal. And then Todd put, I did not learn a single solution to prevent the disabling effects of drug and alcohol abuse. There are numerous competing factions. Prevention, treatment, enforcement, there is no one solution. It's an overall approach. And let's see, from St. Elizabeth, one of the studies stated that it takes 6 to 8 attempts to reach 1 year of sobriety. This may take 2 or 3 years to obtain the 1 year of sobriety, because each time they fail, it's like do not pass go, do not collect $200. They have to start over. And we lose 174 individuals to opiates every day in the United States. How'd I do on my 3 minutes?
You were 5 seconds over.
Take it out of my pay.
All right, is there any other reports of representatives this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to the reports of city operations. Our city engineer is not here this evening. I don't think we've got anybody sitting in for him, so,
For Jim Viox. But you did mention that he had an idea, brainstorm about Narrows Road. And I'd like to piggyback on his genius, if I may, and just consider finishing off that 100 feet of sidewalk while we're tearing the place up and whatever, and see what it would cost for us to finish that off. And I think that would, really address 2 very deep concerns about our East Side residents.
it's a great point. So going from Deer Chase to the proposed development.
Right, right.
I love that idea. That's great. All right. We'll move on to our city attorney, Mr. Gatlin.
Yes, just briefly, Mayor. First, we do have an ordinance amending the zoning map of the city of Erlanger as it relates to the Marcus Carey property that has been discussed. I mentioned it earlier, and I just want to remind council, this was recommended by the Kenton County Planning Commission. So this legislative body would have 90 days to overturn that by a majority of the fiscal court. So if there is no action taken tonight, and I know there's already been a motion made for a first reading, but if there is no action within that 90-day period, whether it be this meeting or the next meeting, then that ordinance would pass as operation of law. We are able to get the first and second reading in tonight, and at the next meeting, I looked at the calendar, and it is like the 89th day would be the next council meeting. Next on the agenda has been discussed as a municipal order, which is adding a couple job descriptions as well as an ordinance amending the pay plan, which were discussed by Ms. Hoffman. That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Our city council attorney, Mr. Wickman.
I don't have anything to report, Mayor, but I'll answer any questions.
All right. Go ahead, Mrs. Setkamp.
No question, just want to plug Yellin' with Helen, St. Patty's Day, Super Bowl. I don't care if you bowl, it's a fun time. Go and support this great cause. The Wickman family has raised over $188,000 for cancer research. Great job.
Thank you. Congratulations. Next, we've got our city administrator, Mr. Kramer.
Yes, I sent out earlier about the Jim Biak's plan to redo Narrows at Nelson while the development at Dries is going on, so everybody has that. What that would do, assuming that ordinance passes and Dries does purchase the property, they've agreed to donate the land needed to straighten that out and the dirt also to raise it up, so it wouldn't be such a curve. Any questions about that? I sent that out earlier. The only other thing I would like to add is dispatch. We have decided to work with the county to merge dispatch 1 July 2018 instead of 1 January 2018, just due to the staffing concerns, and I think we've all, January 2019. Due to staffing concerns, and I believe we've all discussed that. If anybody had any questions further, okay. Just want to put up some information about the Division Street properties. Just so council is aware, this is the area we're looking at. The street going down is Division Street, and it's on the corner of Division and Woodward. Go to the next slide. Those are the two lots. Both would be facing Division now. Before it was facing Woodward as one lot. 0.17 acres and 0.18. They should say 0.1, sorry. That's just the lots around. Before. The question was, why were they split? And it is pretty consistent with the surrounding areas. The 24 lots that are listed on there, if you exclude the 0.93 acres, it's 0.1 acre average. And if you include that, it's 0.22 average. While earlier I went ahead and looked at all the values around the area, the 19 homes that I did look, there's 24 listed on this picture. Out of 19 homes, the average value of the homes are $101,000 each. None of the homes, I think the highest value of the homes on that picture is $132,000. So the $150,000 home would be the highest in that area, pictured there. You go next. There was a recommendation of a park. As you can see, these are the different parks that are located near that area, one a few hundred feet away. Also, there's elevation concerns. There's about an 8-foot drop between the street and the flat part of that second lot there, that if it was a park, it would be kind of a challenge to have there. Any questions about that? Next slide. These are just the funds. The numbers are all over, sorry. The funds that were spent on the property since we had to get rid of the house, the asbestos, and the demo, which came to a total of $20,000, just so the council was aware of all the costs that were into the property at this point. Next slide. Next slide. We've already gone over this, I believe. If you can click to the next one. This is similar to what they would be looking at building there. This is a property in Ludlow, two-story. The only addition is this would be the first time Honk would ever add an attached garage. Per our zoning, they must have a garage and a driveway. So it would look similar to this, except there would be a one-car garage on it. If anybody has any questions about that before we move forward. The plan right now is to be all brick, but there is nothing in the bid or anything that would require them. We asked them to make them both brick just for longevity. They said that's what they would like to do, but they haven't got all the final costs in to see if that's going to be the case or not. So they couldn't guarantee it, but we did ask them to make them. I think if we ever do this in the future, that would be one of the stipulations in the bid. There's no questions for me. That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right, you've heard the reports of the representatives and city operations. Do I entertain a motion that we adopt as presented? Motion by Mrs. Kyle, second by Mr. Blankenship. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. All right, motion carried. Next, Mrs. Hoffman, is there any correspondence this evening? Okay. I did have one quick one I'm going to read real quick. This was from Angela Payer from the Kenton County Library. She said, "Thank you so much for your participation in our grand opening, ribbon cutting. We appreciate your speech, but I thought it was very kind of you also to stay for the Thane Maynard event celebrating our new venue. Thank you for your support. Sincerely, Angela Pear." She didn't have to thank me for that, because little does she know that Thane Maynard was like my hero as a kid, and you couldn't have drugged me out of there. So, anyhow, I still want to be Thane Maynard. Mr. Kramer said I still have time. All right, so next up on the agenda is bids, and this is regarding the 433 Division Street and the 437 Division Street. Mrs. Hoffman, are there any other bids? Or, I see, no, I'm sorry, excuse me. Who?
We received one bid for each of those properties. Each bid was from Honk, and each one was in the amount of $8,000.
All right, and we have had a request from the audience to reject those bids and put it back out to bid so that, and this is, if I'm hearing this correctly, so that they have an opportunity to bid on the property as well. Is there a motion from council to that effect? No motion? All right. Go ahead.
So something I had asked David Hahn about was, is there any kind of stipulations that we can put? I understand that we've already received the bid, but when there's a sales contract, we could potentially put in that there has to be a min and a max for the property value. Can we make sure that we put? We can't?
Yeah, you'd have to reject the bid. Because they bid on it based on the specifications that were in the bid, and there was no min or max in that bid specification.
Okay. So in order to do anything, we'd have to reject the bid, create a new bid process, and add the minimum.
Process, new specifications.
New specifications. During that, if we did something like that, we could also put in specifications that if something is going to be built there, it needs a brick wrap.
Yes.
So just to clarify, did the specification, just refresh my memory, did the specification say that something had to be built on those parcels? So Honk wouldn't necessarily be required to build?
They would be, correct me if I'm wrong, Jack, they would be required to build because that was the plan that they submitted along with their bid. So that's how, when the council determines which bid to pick, it's not just the price, because they don't have to pick high price, but they pick whatever they think is best for the city. They provided 2 separate homes that they were going to build and the designs to go along with that. So if we accepted their bid, we would accept those 2 designs.
Okay.
And what they would use the property for.
All right.
And they planned on building one in 2019 and one in 2020, if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check. Yeah. So they plan to have one completed in 2019 and the other one complete in 2020.
Excuse me.
So we,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Just so I'm clear, you said they submitted the plan and it showed construction of 2 houses in the parcels. Did it specify what the houses were going to look like or condition? So that's already in there.
all right, do we have a motion to accept those bids? Motion by Mr. Montgomery, second by Mr. Nicely. Any discussion? All in, go ahead.
When was the one house taken down?
Would have been back in 2015. Mm-hmm. 14. I know it was after I took office, because it was still, I remember driving by it after I took office, and that would have been early 2015. Okay. Sorry, go ahead, Mrs. Fetty. Question?
Apparently, we took ownership of it from the bank in 2014, late 2014. It was taken, the facility was torn down in late 2015. And that's
Okay.
when the decision to do the subdivision was agreed upon. And then it's just taken until March of 2017 to make it official.
I think that's all accurate, thank you. Any other discussion? All right. Then we'll go ahead and, let's call for a roll call vote. This is a vote to accept the bids for the 2 Division Street properties from Honk. Each parcel was $8,000, so $16,000 bid total.
If the city's got $20,000 tied up in these 2 lots, why are you selling them for 16?
Well, I mean, I know you've been around for at least the last year or so. We've sold a lot of parcels that are far under what we've put into them.
I mean, you can't buy a lot in Erlanger for that kind of money. Surely there's some kind of,
It went through the public bid process.
I mean, you're losing money on them. At least get your money back.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about several parcels over the last 3
Oh,
or
I
4
know.
months where we've
I know.
lost money.
Well, I mean, that's not good to lose money.
I agree. It's definitely not ideal.
So I don't, I think you can get more out of it myself.
Okay.
But, I mean, that's just my thought. So the more you get out of them, the better housing you're going to get in there. So.
Okay.
How would you do it?
Surely you can get more out of them. I mean, if you look at some of the lots and the way they're selling at Erlanger, I mean,
Okay.
I mean, I've sold lots myself in Erlanger for 30-some thousand.
Mhm.
So I know that they're worth more than 8,000 apiece.
Okay.
So, it's something to think about.
All right, thank you, Mr. Skidmore. Any other discussion? Go ahead, Mrs. Kyle.
I'm confused. I thought we published the bids. Weren't they published where people
Yes.
could bid?
Mhm.
And these were the only bids we got?
This was the only bid we got.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was advertised in the Kentucky Enquirer by law. That's where we have to advertise it. Joe's not here. I thought it was placed on the website. I'm not sure. I did not look on there, but I know it was advertised in the Kentucky Enquirer. Yes.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the statutory requirement.
Any other discussion from council? Okay.
How long is Honk going to wait for an answer?
On the bid? I think they've already been pretty patient. I don't know how much of a choice they have, really. I mean, why are you asking this? Are you afraid that they're going to walk away from their bid? Or do you want to extend the time further?
I just wanted to know if they were going to walk away, or if they've just got their, I mean, like Don said, we've got 20,000 invested, and we're only asking for 16. So,
I think we were asking for 2 million, but we got
well, go ahead and
16.
ask for 4.
All right, Mrs. Pitts?
Well, first of all, nobody that I know gets the Enquirer anymore. So I think we might want to, for now on, advertise on our site. And is it a hardship to put it back out for bid?
We can do that. There's no guarantee that you'll get Honk to bid, or, I mean, that's the only bid. So, I mean, it's just what you have right now is the 16,000, and you could reject that bid and take your chances at someone coming in higher later on.
So I've never bid on property, so I have no clue how this works. But so when you put it out to bid, you advertise, and then is it like a silent thing, or do people just overbid each other? Is it like an auction? Is it like a, I mean, I don't know.
It's an enclosed bid. I mean, you make a written offer, and it's enclosed, and nobody knows what other people are bidding.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Skidmore?
That 20,000 that you got invested in that, does that include Public Works' time mowing that, or is that just actual money dollar in it?
That does not include the ongoing cost of maintaining the property.
Oh, okay. So really, you've got more than 20,000 in it,
Yep,
right?
and we'll have continued until it's sold.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Yes, absolutely. Turn on your mic, please, Mr. Whitmore.
Thank you. First of all, you've got a motion on the floor to accept the bids. It's had a motion and a second. So if you're going to do something else, somebody needs to make a motion to table that until a later date. In regard to the bids, as Mr. Gatlin and Sherry Hoffman have indicated, there are certain legal requirements that the city must publish or advertise the sale in a particular way, and unfortunately, it's in the Enquirer, and as Pitts is correct, nobody reads the Enquirer anymore. So if you think you can get a better bid by different types of advertising, you're not limited to that advertisement. You can advertisement any way you want to. You can put billboards on the property, you can put it on Facebook, any way you want to. But I will caution you in this regard. Mr. Skidmore is correct. The market value of lots in Erlanger probably is greater than the amount that was bid. But that's on a purchase without conditions. These lots had significant conditions on them because they had to build on them. That was one of the requirements. So anytime you put a condition on a sale, it's going to reduce the value. So having said that, I don't know that you're going to get any greater value, but you can certainly try. There's no question about that. But in order to do it at this point in these proceedings, somebody needs to move to table the motion to accept the bids.
I've got a comment to make on this. You put it up for bid. I would not have given no more than that for the lots, and I will buy lots. I wouldn't give no more than that. We put it up for bid, the highest bidder got it, let them have it, and let's move on.
All right, yeah, we do have a motion and a second on the floor. We did ask for discussion. This is discussion that is germane to the motion. Without an overriding motion, we will move on to a vote. All right, if there's no other discussion, then we will have a roll call vote.
Mr. Blankenship,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Skidmore, Ms. Sedkamp,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Cahill,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Skidmore, Ms. Kyle,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Burke,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Nicely,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Cahill,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Pitts,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Montgomery,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Fetty.
All right, it looks like we've got 9-3. The motion passes. All right, next item on the agenda is old business. Does anybody have any unfinished business to discuss or report? Seeing none, we'll move on to new business. Anyone have any new business to discuss?
I don't have any new business. I wanted to ask the assistant chief where the boxes are to drop off any type of drugs, if you don't mind.
It's in the lobby of the police station.
Well, is there anywhere, anyplace else? So if the building's locked, nobody can drop them off. But if they're outside, people can get in them. I mean,
No, dispatch can buzz them in.
okay.
City officials don't actually touch the drugs at all, so if it's after hours, they'll just buzz, dispatch will buzz them into the lobby. they deposit it into the box, and then they let
Take care of
themselves
it from
out.
there.
Yep.
Is there a sign or anything at the buzzer that would inform people of that?
Yeah, there's,
But I mean, if somebody walked up with prescription drugs and they pull on the door and it's locked, do they know to ring the buzzer to drop those off there, that we would still take it after
if they're
hours?
just trying to get in, I would assume. I mean, there's nothing specifically stating after hours to drop them off.
Okay. May not be a bad idea.
No,
Put
just
a little sign there.
Make sure people still know where they're at, where it's
Okay.
at.
Good. All right. Thank you, Mr. Burke.
Yep.
All right. Any other new business? Seeing none, we'll move on to legislation. First item is an ordinance regarding the map amendment of the list property. This is the second reading.
Yes, sir. It's an ordinance of the city of Erlanger and Kenton County, Kentucky, amending the zoning map of the Erlanger zoning ordinance to reclassify the list form on that map from the R1C zone to the R1C. I'm sorry. I'll start over. It's an ordinance of the city of Erlanger. It's an ordinance of the city of Erlanger in Kenton County, Kentucky, amending the zoning map of the Erlanger zoning ordinance to reclassify the list farm on that map from the R1C zone to the R1C parenthesis RCD zone with an agreed development plan. That agreed development plan includes the revisions to the original proposal that was discussed earlier. And again, by summary, it's just an ordinance rezoning the list farm property to R1C parenthesis RCD, which is a residential cluster development zone.
All right. Do I entertain a motion? Motion by Mr. Burke, second by Mrs. Sedkamp. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Skidmore? Mr. Blankenship?
Yes, ma'am.
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 All right, motion carried. Next is an ordinance regarding the amended pay scale. This is a first reading.
This is an ordinance of the city of Erlanger in Kenton County, Kentucky, amending the pay plan to move the position of front desk clerk from Band K to Band M, and to add the newly created position of TAC officer crime analyst to Band K. By summary, you'll see in section 1 the newly created position and also the movement from K to M, and that is the new pay plan that would be adopted.
All right, I ask Mrs. Hoffman to note the first reading. Next is an ordinance regarding the Marcus Carey property.
It's an ordinance amending the zoning map of the city of Erlanger County, Kenton, Kentucky for an area of approximately 1.24 acres located approximately 200 feet northwest of Dixie Highway between Price Avenue to the northeast and McAlpin Avenue to the southwest, approximately 250 feet southwest of Price Avenue, changing the area from R1F, a single-family residential zone, to NC, a neighborhood commercial zone. The Exhibit A was emailed about 6 weeks ago. It will be attached as a part of the second reading. As summary, this is a zone change. It was recommended by KCPC on the following bases. 1, the proposed zoning is appropriate and the current zoning is inappropriate. 2, that the evidence submitted at the hearing held on January 4th, 2018, and 13, that the proposed zone meets the comprehensive plan of Vision 2030. This is a first reading.
All right, I ask Mrs. Hoffman to please note the first reading of that ordinance. Next is a municipal order regarding the amended job descriptions.
This municipal order of the City of Erlanger and Kenton County amending the City of Erlanger personnel policies by amending the job descriptions titled Front Desk Clerk, Administrative Clerk, Museum Assistant Part-Time, Community Events Part-Time, Assistant City Clerk, and City Clerk, and adding the new position of TAC Officer Crime Analyst. By summary, you'll see the new job descriptions are attached to this municipal order.
All right, do I entertain a motion to adopt this municipal order as read? Motion by Mrs. Sedkamp, second by Mrs. Kyle. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Motion carried. Next is a municipal order regarding surplus property on Viox Drive, the concrete plant.
Municipal order of the City of Erlanger, Kenton County, Kentucky, making the written determinations required by KRS 82083 for the sale or other disposition of property owned by the city. And as indicated by the mayor, this is property description of 645 Erlanger Road, currently open land. Reason for disposal is possible future development, and the disposal method is sealed bids.
All right, do I entertain a motion? Motion by Mr. Burke, second by Mr. Nicely. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. All right, motion carried. All right, with that, the last thing on our agenda is adjournment. Do I entertain a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. Burke. You sure? I think we're going to have a lot of discussion on this one. Second by Mrs. Skidmore.
You could table.
Any
the motion.
discussion? You can override that motion.
That's right, you can override it and table it.
All
We
in-
can just sit here all night.
All in favor say aye. All right, motion carried.